Meeting of the Commissioners' Finance meeting. It's January 18th, 2023 at 1:30 p.m. So do we have any public comment? There's none in the room. Is there any online? No. Okay, thanks, Kelly. So we'll move on to agenda item number 3, which is the approval of the minutes of December 21 and December 28th, 2002.
Move to approve the minutes of December 21 and December 28, 2022.
I second that motion. Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have no opposed, so motion carries. And now we are on to item number 4. We have a topic of discussion today. This is the discussion of possible motion of lease agreement between Cumberland County and the Susquehanna Regional Transportation Authority. And we have Mr. Rich Farr with us today to present. Thank you, sir.
Excellent, excellent. I have some handouts that I'm going to distribute. Let's see, I'll give you one. I know you've seen this. Gary may be coming in, right? So I heard, oh, you have them already. So now I'm giving you something you already have.
All right.
Well,
No,
perfect.
that's okay.
All right.
Thank you.
So, so a couple of things at play here, but mostly one of the goals that we and PennDOT, who's our major funder, an objective that they have is for us to have all of rolling stock under a roof, right? And so there are a lot of reasons for that. Obviously, it extends the life of the vehicle. Our number one workers' comp claim is drivers falling on black ice between vehicles when they're doing their pre-trips early in the morning, those kind of things. So having that ability to have them under roof helps with that. It helps with security, allows us to make sure that the vehicles are not accessible by anyone trying to do something bad, right? And in this particular case, we're excited about the opportunity of adding a bus wash. So, keeping the exterior of the vehicles clean, again, get the salt and debris off, extends the life of that. And, this bus wash could potentially be available to other municipal partners. So it's something that we could offer, and now it'll be, it's not a car wash, it's a bus wash. So larger vehicles that have that kind of frame would work going through that. So like municipal vehicles. So that's really what we're looking for. The map indicates sort of what the facility layout is proposed to look like. If it's okay, I'll just take a second, kind of walk through what that looks like. So the long, largest building, these are proposed to be prefabbed, like pole structure kind of facilities. And so there are three buildings, I guess, because the bus wash. They will not adjoin because prefab, they cannot touch each other because of their engineered buildings that have to be freestanding structures. So the largest one is the bus barn. That's where the vehicles will be parked. They'll come in from the lower end of east-west, so north. That would be from the west, and they'll come in and they'll actually back into their spot at the end of the day. So they'll come through the bus wash, come around, pull in, and the drivers can back them into their parking spot. And then when they exit, they'll go out towards Rittner Road. At the top of the inside of the proposed property needed for this project, you'll see an office location. So that's where the site manager, the dispatcher's office is. There's a small break room for drivers, restrooms, and a small meeting room where we can do our training for new hires and ongoing employee meetings. Some proposed parking close in proximity to that. We a couple handicap spots, and we propose to save a couple for customers. So we have folks, seniors that come in to sign up for services, keep them close to the office so they don't have to travel as far. And then a little hard to see, but on the right-hand side in the middle is the proposed bus wash. And so that's the project that we're looking at completing. The majority of the funds will be state funds. When we do this project, there will be a required local match, but the majority of the funds will come from PennDOT for this project. And so the engineering and design is at 30%, and they can't progress beyond that until they know what is the property boundaries, can we actually put it here, that kind of thing. So we're kind of at that crossroads of having them go to the next level of design. So this is probably a project we've been working on for at least a couple of years, maybe 2 or 3 years, having conversations, going back, getting PennDOT on board, freeing up space that's needed, I believe, in the current facility that we're using that you need for county business. And so we think it's a pretty good project. So we have a lease agreement. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about that so you're aware of that. So typically, when we have state and federal funds in a transit project, where it's called satisfactory continuing control. And so we have to make sure that the transit asset that's invested in is used for public transportation for the life of the project. And so that's what that lease indicates, that it'll be used for public transportation for the life of the project. When the lease concludes, I won't be here, but my successor probably, because it's a while, it's 30
40 years.
40
years.
Thank you. And so at that point, there'll be discussion, is it still needed? If it's still needed, maybe a different lease arrangement would be made at that time where the property would revert back to the full ownership of the county.
Anything else?
I don't think so, not on this topic. Did I miss anything, do you think? Okay. And so we're excited to get to this point. It's been a journey.
Commissioner, do you have any
Yeah,
questions or comments?
Rich, access to this being off the Tangerville Drive.
Yes.
All right, is there any, I guess they come in and they would go out for it's written. Can that occur the other way?
I imagine probably the drivers will come in. There's, I think, 3 entrances, right? So every driver will probably do something different. There's a preference from the county's perspective. Yeah, we can certainly give them a directive. I don't think we have a preconceived idea what that looks like.
Yeah, that's really my only concern out of what I see here.
Right. I think, it's, as all operations, as things progress, so it could be changes that, hey, we need you to do this. Obviously, we'll be able to support whatever that direction is, or whatever the need is for the rest of the property.
I believe the majority of the drivers will come in off the Rittner Highway because of the way they'll be accessing the bus wash.
Right. That would be my guess as well.
Yeah.
I can't promise you that I'll do that, right? Because sometimes exercise independent thought, but we'll try to encourage them to do so in contract. Always at the most inopportune time, it's easier to do that.
Is there anything from staff? Brent, you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, a little bit about the bus wash. You didn't reference, but in the lease, they're giving county use of the bus wash.
Correct.
Which is significant, actually, if you think about it. The keeping a vehicle clean, is paramount for longevity. Probably increase the value of the vehicles a little bit. We at that facility, the county, there's about 50 county-owned vehicles that are either parked there or travel to that building each day. That's just shy of 50% of our fleet. So that means 50% of our fleet will have the opportunity to get washed every day. There's also a statistic out there that says that a clean vehicle can operate up to 10% more efficient than a dirty vehicle. So if you take that into consideration, I'm sure Mr. Farr will tell you that's significant cost savings for them, but it will be for us as well. And then you can even go into the greenhouse gas savings that would occur. So
How is a clean vehicle more efficient?
Extra wax.
it's the aerodynamics from the dirt. That's what it is.
Is that right? Okay.
I can't say that it's proven, but I mean it's out there if you do some research.
An added feature inside the bus barn, which I failed to mention, we are running the conduit for the potential for electric vehicles. So several of the bus bays will be wired for that. I see that, you can see the writing on the wall, it's coming. And so we'd like to pilot, and I'll talk a little, I have sort of a list of things I'd like to cover today. And so we'll talk.
Wyoming doesn't see it coming. I don't know if
What's
you
that?
saw that, the Wyoming legislature is introducing a ban.
Really?
Yeah.
They better keep the vehicles are running in good shape because the manufacturers aren't making anymore.
Yeah.
I always say when Ford electrifies its F-150, the #1 selling vehicle in the country, I think we're seeing something, right? Whether we like it or not, it's coming. So, but I think that's a plus, that we're able to do that in this location. So we kind of think helps all of the, the initiatives that all the communities are trying to do as far as the green movement. I think that's a good thing.
Does that create any extra draw that's requires any infrastructure changes other than just the rigging?
Yeah, I don't think so because of, I would think that here for the application we would use here, it would be the overnight sort of slow trickle recharge, but we're not looking for a fast charge. And I think if we ever get to that point, we'd want to, we'll be back here having a conversation about what the facility could look like. Cause I would think we'd want to incorporate a solar aspect if we're gonna have a fast charge station. So I think we'll cross that bridge when we get here. And I see this sort of, the driver comes back at the end of the night, washes the vehicle, plugs it in, at 110, from the wall, it trickles overnight, and the next morning it's charged again.
Don't forget to plug her in.
They'll be pushing it.
I think the only thing that I would add is in terms of overhead costs for Rapid Transit, the cost will be lower. The lease itself does not have a monthly fee associated with it. The team really delved very deep into the numbers after this 40-year period. All of the money that is expended to build these 3 structures, the county will own those 3 structures. And so it is a huge benefit to the county. We are paying 3 1/3% local match on the capital project expenses related to this project. And for that, we will receive at the end of that 40-year period, these 3 structures that will be part of then the county complement. But again, the operating expenses, we see huge impact on those operating expenses, which will help us partner together to really hold the line on expenses, especially for the contracts with our county departments who utilize those services greatly.
We're talking about that too.
Sorry.
It's all right. No, that's important conversation because it's all about cost containment. We have to, the people who buy service, the agencies specifically who buy service from us, they're not seeing increases from the state or feds. Modest, maybe inflationary from time to time. So we have to be very mindful of that.
So Rich, I heard you say that you had some other things that you wanted to talk about. Are they related to this?
Yeah, they are.
Okay, so do we want to take action on this then now and then? Okay. So we have the possibility of a motion on a lease agreement between Cumberland County and the Susquehanna Regional Transportation Authority. Do we have a motion on that, please?
Move to approve the lease agreement between Cumberland County and the Susquehanna Regional Transportation Authority as presented.
I'll second it.
Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. And
Right.
then,
And we'll continue to work with staff as the building designs come and the colors and all that kind of stuff. So we'll make sure that everyone is fully involved in that process. I'd like to change subjects and talk about the new, I don't want to say CAT because, CAT no longer exists for Rapid Transit. So the organization formerly known as CAT. This is the proposed project. We are just moving into the 30% design phase. And so you can see here on the left side is Cameron Street. So that gives you a little indication, Her Street and then the State Street Bridge. And so where this building is being proposed to be built is currently sitting on the Goodwill property that exists. We own that property now. The property from Goodwill to the bridge is Commonwealth property, and we're told that that will become part of this complex. And so, and I say we're going into 30% design. We've shrunk the building 3 times. Mentioned cost containment. Engineers like to build things, and we don't need to be overbuilt. We need it to be right size for our operation with the potential for a little bit of future growth, electrification. This building, it will be equipped with compressed natural gas because that's the current partnership, the 3P that PennDOT has. So it'll be CNG compliant. So we'll probably go for CNG then into electrification in the next 10 years.
I have some questions on what that transition looks like.
Yeah, well, I probably won't have answers, but I want to hear your questions because it may help us think, because I think it's a big deal. But Paul's for a moment talking about electrification. So I'm currently gathering all the data across the state of PennDOT's getting this information from me because we have our board retreat in 2 months. And so they're big on what are we doing? How are we planning for this? What's our story? And so, the rest of the country, you can see the numbers of electric buses growing, not here, not in this state. And so that's the policy for PennDOT is compressed natural gas. That's what they've been investing in. It's still greener. But we need to figure out what we're doing, and we're going to need them to be on board to support us.
I guess the major question revolves around the financing of the infrastructure swap out.
Right.
More importantly, what's the future prospects of the fuel stock?
Right.
Because you generate a lot of electricity and that's very constrained. Natural gas.
Infrastructure, like in California, which they're way ahead of the rest of the country, which makes me nervous because they have one of the worst electric grids in the country. Like, I don't know how all that's going to work. I have some concerns about that myself. Like, we don't need a bunch of electric vehicles and then nobody can charge the vehicle to work. What does that look like? Our concern, that's a policy that's way outside of our reach. But looking closer to DOT, like all the discretionary grants, they're all electric vehicles. If we want to be able to participate in getting discretionary funds, and the more federal funds that are in our program, the less local county money we need. So it's in our best interest to do that. If the trend continues, there won't be discretionary grants for diesel buses. Like, it's not going to happen. Hydrogen, which is even less known, and electric. And so we can see the writing on the wall. That's because that's sort of DOT's policy at this moment, is moving to electrification.
I guess the concern I have is, they were all in grants for the natural gas because that was the hot thing. And so all the money lined up there, all of a sudden it's not the hot thing. So now electric's the hot thing. So
Now compressed or natural gas is bad. If you look at what they're trying to do in Congress.
but a lot of investment was made in pivoting to that, and all of a sudden we're dropping that largely.
Correct.
And moving to a new thing, which we're not sure about the new thing. So
I wouldn't want all of my eggs in one basket out of the gate. And I guess the good thing is that we probably have a transition period of 10 years for our fixed route program. That gives us the ability to see where things are going.
it's not a very long transition.
No, it's not. It's not. Thank you.
Sorry,
yeah.
didn't mean to make you cry.
Yeah, it's because we have buses have a 12-year, a minimum of 12-year life cycle.
How old are on average?
I have a chart for that too, because we're not talking about that. So our right now are 30, and this is combined. So we don't have 30-foot buses in Carlisle. There we have 35 and 40. In York we have 30. 30 and 35-foot buses, there's none that are eligible for replacement. They're all within the 12 years. I don't have the exact numbers. 40-foot buses, we have 31% that are eligible for replacement. So the majority of our buses, because we just replaced a lot of them over the last 2 or 3 years, so we have at least 12. We usually keep them 14 to 15 years. So we probably have 12 more years before we're in a position where even those buses could be replaced. We'll have a good understanding of where we're going with that.
So with your plan though, that we're not looking at a major disruption of the financing for the new rolling.
I don't see your financing support changing at all.
Okay,
I don't see us coming in with needing this big number from you.
right.
This is the big number from you, right? That's where we have, this is that one-time infrastructure. And then the cost of everything goes up, inflationary for vehicles and stuff, but we wouldn't have to come back with, we need to invest all this in electrification because we're going to incorporate at least the backbone of the infrastructure into the new building.
Hypothetically, if there is a bigger movement towards hydrogen, because there's a couple of scientific things going on out there, are we able to put hydrogen in there? Because I think there's some unique potential safety hazards.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question. I know nothing about hydrogen. Like, I'm following electrification. I still think electric is going to be everything makes electricity. Wind, solar, natural gas, coal. Like, I think that's, and getting hydrogen, I think takes too much energy to get it, in my opinion. It's kind of like biofuels. I was big on biofuels, and then I went to a biofuel manufacturing plant and realized there's a lot of work to get this. Like, I'm not sure that's a smart investment. Like, so But yeah, and we're watching it closely, trying to figure out how do we strategize and plan for this potential change. So hopefully over the course of the next 3 months, we'll have a better understanding where we'll
See
see.
where I'm going with that is
Oh, yeah.
that we're investing in this facility. And then all of a sudden there's a,
Well, the good news would be if there is that left-hand turn, the feds would have to support it with their policy, so 80% of the cost. Not that that's still good news, but, right, yeah, I don't know. The tea leaves are unclear. But that, just to kind of give you an idea, and we'll, as this project progresses, we'll come back. I think what's important for this, in addition for another item on my list, notice the transfer center along Cameron Street. So currently we have the Market Street Square. That is far from a transfer center. Like, we cannot do time point transfers. The bus has to leave before the next one comes in. It's not ideal. Not even close. So I want to talk about our transit development plan towards the end, but keep this in mind with this transfer center construction, which is part of this project. It changes how we do business in a completely different way. And I want to talk more about that at the end. So kind of keep that in mind if you please. Any questions on the building? Okay. And again, as things develop, I'll get with Stacy and try to get on the agenda to come back in from time to time to keep you updated on what's going on. I'm pulling trees today. So one of the concerns I have is with our shared ride program. But it's good news and bad news, right? So one of the things that we worked hard on when we talked about coming together is saving money, right? That's the whole purpose of doing that. But when you save $1 million, that $1 million carries forward every year, but it doesn't grow, right? Once you have the savings, you moved on. So we have not had a rate increase here in the county since 2015, which is great. And we were doing pretty good financially until the pandemic, staffing shortages, inflation, gas prices were really starting to feel the pinch. And so we're in the early stages of doing a fair increase application, trying to figure out what that looks like. How that works is that it will be a lift because, again, we have 11 counties, and I'm required by PennDOT to meet with every funding partner prior to even deciding what to do. So I'm going to have to go all 11 counties, every aging, every MHIDD, county commissioners, right? So it's a process. So the staff is working on it. This is the chart they proposed to me, which shows a 27% increase. That can't happen. Not in year one, because MHIDD will not be able to meet it. Like, we have to figure out, it's probably a multi-year step so they can plan for it better. I don't know what it looks like yet. All I'm saying is that we're at a crossroads where it's becoming incredibly painful for us to balance it. Thank goodness for CARES Act funds. The York system, we've been using money that was allocated for York to cover all the shared ride programs. It's federal funds, it's okay. And so that's been keeping us alive, and we know what that looks like. There's an end to those funds. And so PennDOT is also very aware of this problem, because this is not our problem. This is a statewide shared ride problem. They see the crisis everywhere. And so we're looking at, and we've had 2 summits, they have consultants, they're looking at, do we need to redesign the whole shared ride program, look at it in a different way? I don't know what those answers are yet, but I don't want to fix our problem, and then a year from now, PennDOT fixes the problem, and we've carried the burden. So we're going to do something. It's going to be multiple steps. Again, you'll see me again on this topic as we begin mapping out the plan. This is sort of the peek behind the curtain effort of this is the, you look at inflation, you look at our rates, you can see why we're falling behind a little bit. So more to come on that, but it'll be, we'll have lots of conversations before any decisions are made. And again, I have to work with your aging department and your MHIDD and make sure that those objectives are met.
So you have 11 counties in your shared ride portfolio?
Yeah.
All right. I suppose you have significant usage data to draw on.
Yeah. Shared ride, we talk about like recovery from post-COVID. we're in the 80s. All of our services are growing. But shared ride is recovering the fastest. We've had months where it surpassed pre-COVID ridership, right? But it dips back down, it's seasonal. So I think it speaks to the importance of the shared ride program with seniors and people with disabilities. It's their only access. It's big. If you ever want an experience, let me know and you can come ride along for an afternoon. It really is. It's heartbreaking watching what these folks go through. Actually, I know you know Toby. When he was deputy secretary, I said, "Come ride." And so we've arrived at a woman's house, and her son brings out her wheelchair down 3 steps, and it's raining. She comes out. She's the double amputee on her hands, crawling through the water to get. And like he was just horrified. Like we have to put ramps in everybody's house. We're not going to fix that problem, right? But it's to see how folks and the importance of the shared ride program is just. It's really pretty amazing. It's a good thing. That's what I get out of bed in the morning for, right? It makes a difference. So, all right. Next piece of paper. So speaking of shared ride, one of the other challenges that we're encountering is this is the rolling stock stuff that I referenced a moment ago about, so you can see those numbers. So in the shared ride, which is the far right of the chart, and again, we have like 300 shared ride vehicles over the 11 counties, right? So it's a pretty big, but 60 or 66% of the larger shared ride vehicles are past their estimated useful life. 100% of our minivans, now we don't have minivans, but they're in the more rural counties. It's just supply chain. We can't get the vehicles, but it's killing us because we're having to replace the engines and transmissions of vehicles we normally would have retired. We have over 150 vehicles on order, and typically we know when they're coming online because the manufacturer will give us a VIN number. I have 15 VIN numbers right now out of over 150 vehicles. Some of these things are deliberate, like the CB stands for, I should put a code on there, commuter bus. So like the Rabbit Express coming from Harrisburg to York, we have to figure out what the future of that is. The commuter market's different. It doesn't look like it did before. But for you, the Arctic bus, which is the 60-foot bus that bends in the middle, is incredibly important because that's bringing all of your Chewy workers from Harrisburg. And that 60-foot bus is packed. And it broke down last week, and I almost had a meltdown with it because we had to leave people standing at the bus stop. They couldn't fit on the 40-foot bus. We have to, that bus is needed. And we've been buying used ones, and we get retired ones from Septu. When they're done with the vehicle, there's nothing left to it. And so we have to figure out what we're going to do. I wasn't convinced we needed it. Those industrial park runs, we need to have the 60-foot buses on those. That's a big deal.
How many of those articulated buses?
Yeah, it bends in the middle.
How many of those do we have?
We have 3.
And you really just run those on like
The industrial parks. It brings folks primarily from Dauphin County to the industrial parks here.
But you're running them essentially on the interstate or?
Well, yes, they have to go a little bit on 81, right? Not far, but
We're
like
not running those through communities.
Oh, you can articulated bus can fit anywhere a 30-foot bus can fit. It has better turning radius than a 40-foot transit bus. So I'm told. I've never driven one. I want to sometime, but it has to be in a really big parking lot. Far away from me, but you can be there. And then I said, you have to let me drive it sometime. I do have a CDL, right? So I could drive down the street. You don't want me driving down the street. So, but yeah, the driver tells me, how do you do that, taking it through downtown? And you put the nose through, the rear end follows. You don't have to worry about it. I'm like, okay. Yeah, I would think that to be the case, and I'm glad I don't have to do that. I want to talk just a little bit about staffing. I don't know how you folks are at the county with open positions, but this is the worst of times. It's just really horrendous. So system-wide, we have 63 positions. This was 3 weeks ago. We update the board every month when we have our board meeting. So, Cumberland County shared ride, we have 6 openings here for the shared ride program. The fixed route, we have 4. And this is after, because we did the temporary, it was a temporary service reduction because we were canceling service. I've been in transit for, I don't want to talk about history of CAT cancels stuff all the time. Rich Farr's never canceled fixed route service in 25 years of my career. And I find myself a year and a half ago canceling every day. Like, what? Like, how did we get here? And it's really, so we did a temporary service reduction to meet the current staffing levels. Now we're lower than that. And we did it until the FTA, because they have the Title VI program, you have 1 year to do it. You can up to 12 months, you can do a temporary service reduction. At 12 months, it's considered permanent. You have to go through the public comment process. So we, even though we went through the public comment process and it looks permanent, our position is that service needs to go back on the street, but we have to find operators before we can do that. So
What if the service is underutilized?
I wouldn't say the service we cut was underutilized.
Okay, all right.
Well, I have to qualify everything, right? So it was, we have a percentage decrease because of COVID,
Right.
right? It still had the same percentage of utilization, but just reduced because of the COVID aspect. So it was all productive service pre-COVID. I do think, I want to get, the last point is hold that thought. When we get to the end, I'm going to talk about the transit development plan and how we see ourselves moving forward in the long term. But the point for this conversation is we have this chunk of service hours that we reduced. That service, I want to put that back. It may not be the same way, but I want to preserve those hours. We have the resources. We need to reinvest that back in the community. So it is, we still see it as temporary, but we were required under federal statute to make it look permanent.
Just one intervening thought. We've had this conversation before about historically underutilized routes. When is the last time a route analysis was done?
That was pre-COVID when we did that CAT 2020.
Okay.
And right now, I think the issue is that, and our board keeps asking, what are we doing with this? What does this look like? Primarily for the commuter routes like 81 and 83, they're at like 27% of what it was pre-COVID. And the growth, it's growing. You really have to probably go out 2 years to see the increase in the line, right? Because it's where all the other services have a pretty good return. So I don't know what that looks like yet. I think it's still a little too early, and we're going to go through.
How many of the Commonwealth offices are still closed now?
Most of them are staff. My understanding is the staff is returning, but they're returning 2 days a week. Like there's some requirement for them to come in. But what that does is if they're rotating through, they don't have, first of all, if they're paying for parking, which is why they wanted to use us to avoid that, paying 5 days versus 2 days, I think it's deemed more affordable from the rider or the commuter's perspective. So they're willing to pay parking in a garage for 2 days, not 5 days a week. So I think that's hurting us. The commuter lines coming into downtown Harrisburg, they've only recovered to about 50% of what they worked. So yeah, we have to figure out what does that look like and how who, if not them, who do we serve next, right? Because we know there's unmet needs local. We've talked about that here. What are we doing here, moving people around here? And so I think we have to redesign that. So I have one more point in between. I'll come back to that. Let's talk about the transit development plan. So we're kicking off a transit development plan in-house with our own team. We've started it already. And so the focus for this effort is really, inventory all of our services by mode, looking at service standards, maybe redefining the service standards because of pandemic. What does that look like? We have to kind of go through that process. We want to talk about land use. Hampton Township, I've had 100 conversations with them. Like, we want more service. They're willing to help us with bus stops, and there's a great interest from them to add more service. So we're going to bring in those municipal partners and talk about what do you think they need, and as part of that. So lots of outreach with the planning commissions in the county, the MPO, those kind of things. So that's our focus for the next year. I referenced the transfer center. When that comes online, we're gonna have to do a complete overhaul because we're gonna create a pulse system, which we don't have now. So buses will come together, hopefully further utilizing the Lemoyne Transfer Center, which I think is underutilized. 2 routes come in there now. I think we can do a better job with that too.
I gotta tell you, I thought it was mothballed.
Yeah, no, although there's significant infrastructure issues there right now. The retaining wall along the tracks is decaying. And so we've had half of it marked off but it's not, and I'm not sure, well, you know whether it's there because it's along the line. I'm not sure it's the right location for a transit center. Right, so we're gonna have to evaluate that as part of this process.
There's quite a story behind that.
Oh, I know, yeah, I'm kind of aware, but I don't know if I want to know. But I'm not sure that's the right location long term. So so right now we're setting ourselves up for a big overhaul in a year or two. So we're going to do a lot of work over the next year to understand who we are collectively, the regional connections. We've had meetings with LT and SCTA, which is Lancaster. We're going to go on one fare system as our hope. So when you buy a pass here, it's good in the whole central Pennsylvania region. And so we're really trying to be forward thinking and how do the routes connect across transit systems. And so it's a lot of work over the next year. And then we're going to go into designing the new service. And so some of the things we need to consider, like Perry County got a Academy of Sciences grant administered through Penn State main campus to do analysis of access to work. They have underemployed people. They need to come here. How do we get them here? And by the way, we need them here. There's a lot of job openings. So, so I'm thinking like the Rittner Road industrial area. So do we put in a micro transit that the traditional fixed route and maybe one from Perry County feeds? And then once they come into that transfer center there, they can go out further throughout the industrial park. If they all want us to come to the front door, you'd be on the bus for 3 hours in and out. You can't do that. Like, how do we accommodate? So that's what we're going to be working on after we do the initial. Phase 2 is how do we look at the whole landscape and do a complete change? Don't assume what we've been doing is the right thing forward. So we have a lot of work to do over the next 3 years. And I have some really good planners. We've been very fortunate to add some staff that are they're just top notch.
Great.
Yeah, so good stuff. So a lot of work to come there. And the last thing on my list, it's not a big list, but Franklin County now has service where they're contributing local match. And so in the formation of SRTA, no local match, no board seat. Now that they have local match contributions, they're looking to formally join. So that's just a resolution that will circle around that says, yeah, you're allowed in, kind of thing. And so we're probably going to do that next month. We'll come back with that resolution. So and they're doing it's just a micro transit in the borough of Chambersburg. And a micro transit, if we're over 3 passengers per hour, because it's sort of demand responsive, it's not bad. They're exceeding 4, and they've been running since August. Like I'm scratching my head. Like it's clearly a transit need in that community. Pretty successful. I think we can do something similar in Cumberland County. Yeah. So that's transit in 30 minutes there for you.
One quick question on that. Those types of routes like you're talking about in Chambersburg, is there still any discussion about whether we're close to being able to make those like autonomous vehicles, or is that?
It's interesting. So the conversation up until a year ago was all autonomous.
Phoenix has it already.
That's sort of like silent. Like those conversations I'm not hearing, it's all electrification. So I think if you kind of think of sort of the evolution of a vehicle, in my mind, I'm not an engineer or an expert. I think if you have to master the technology, the electrification to go to the next level. So probably it makes sense. I don't know what manufacturers are thinking. I still think it's coming. I don't know. I thought I would see it in my career. I don't know if I'll see it now in my career. Like I think it's a pretty big lift yet.
So what are you hearing about the availability of service personnel for these whatever new modes there are?
To maintain the vehicle?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, right now try to find a mechanic in general.
Exactly.
Right. It's at some point they're going to be making more money than physicians. Like, it's coming, you can see it. I think it's a problem. We are working with, with the new bill, federal bill, infrastructure bill. There's training money for transportation folks. And so we're trying to figure out how at the state association level, we have what we call Penn Train through our association, to go after those funds and create a sort of an apprenticeship program. Because you're not finding them, we're gonna have to grow our own. And so our hope is that if you go to a VOTEC school or someplace and you get a young person and you treat them well and they get paid, maybe they'll stay with you, because we have to figure out how we replace those folks. I mean, we talk about hiring drivers, that's, I can train, you have a driver's license, I can train you to be a bus driver. Training you to repair a bus, that's a whole different ballgame. Like, that's a skill set. And so we our workforce is, the mechanics are in their late 50s. So, in 10 years, we're at a cliff, and we have to figure out how to back it. So we're spending a lot of time on that right now as an association, because I think it's a problem. Yeah. So, both my kids went to college. I told them to go to the VOTEC school or the tech schools. You're going to make more money there than come out, right? But they don't have a football program, so they couldn't go there. So I said that was a very expensive hobby. Right, 4 years later, 4 years of football, but they're paying for some of it. All right, so, all right, well, I thank you for your time. And it's been a little while since I've been here, so the list was a little long, but, we'll definitely come back as those facilities progress, so we know what's going on. All right.
Appreciate the update, thanks.
Yep, thank you.
Appreciate your time. All right.
Yes, Stacy.
Thank you.
So one thing that Rich emailed me this morning to remind me, and I know we have been discussing it, is PennDOT is looking for our confirmation that we have budgeted for the local match. So if you have any, I know that when we talked about it last week, you had some questions you wanted to review. So if you have any questions for Rich.
So,
The question that keeps recurring is the same question we've had, which is, we're paying more, and we're getting less.
right, well,
Where's that go?
yeah, well, unfortunately, right now with the staffing level, you were getting more for a short period of time. And then the staffing crisis hit, because we did, remember 4 years ago, the CAT had a 2 million unfunded deficit. And so we were down to several hundred thousand before the pandemic hit. So we were completely on track on our own. Then we got this infusion of federal funds, which fixed that problem, right? We renegotiated the contract, and it was really a concession contract. They gave up a ton of stuff. We've since renegotiated, and pause for a moment to give the credit where it's due. I mean, it was painful for the members of the union, but they recognized that we had to do something different to save the authority. So I appreciate what they did. We renegotiated a contract just this last fall. It ended in December, so it was in December sometime when they ultimately signed off. And I have to tell you, culturally, the organization, it was a bit upside down. I have to say, like I was telling Stacey on the way, had I known what the last 4 years would have been, I don't know if I would have signed on so quickly, because I really thought 6 months we'll have this under control, right? We'll be okay. 6 more years maybe. But when we were done with the contract, the negotiating team applauded. And I kind of sat back in my seat. I'm like, did I give away the farm? What are they clapping for? Like, what's going on? And the attorney says, it's the process. That's what we knew the process. It was collaborative. And I'm like, oh, it was. Like, there was not fighting, and there were changes. We can't give it back. It's gone. Like, we have to keep that. But it was a different conversation in a respectful way. So I think we're making progress. This doesn't mean we still don't have speed bumps from time to time. But, at the end of the day, they have their union, but they're our employees serving our community. We have to remember they're people, and they're taking good care of our people. So, we make great progress, but, if it wasn't for the staffing issues, and we need to do service planning anyway. So maybe we take advantage of the staffing issues to pause for a moment to redesign the service. Maybe it's a blessing in some strange way. I don't know. I do think like it's better. And then technology wise, mobile apps, you didn't have that. Like we're really advancing public transportation. We just got to figure out where the buses need to go and when. Right. And that's hard because jobs come and go, plants open, they close, they move. As soon as you set up a line, it looks productive. A business goes out and now what do you do? Right. It's a challenge, but we need to get people to work. So back to Stacy's point, we're required by PennDOT by law that we have to in January show indication of proof of local match. And so, because really they've been paying us, you have a fiscal year, a different fiscal year, right? So they've been paying us for 6 months of good faith. And so now they're like, okay, at 6 months, we know that most municipalities are on a different fiscal year. We need proof that the money's there. And so we just have to upload something that says that we're good to go with the local match.
I see Kirk's with us now. So can you hear us okay, Kirk?
Muted, Kirk.
I think he can hear us, but we can't.
Yeah, we can't hear him.
He was
Almost.
muted and I did see him unmute, but yeah, we're not hearing him.
Is this Zoom?
Yes.
So just under your microphone, click on the little down arrow to make sure that you have the right speaker selected or the right microphone selected. I don't know if you have more than one. If you have like a Logitech and a laptop, sometimes it reads the wrong one. We're 3 years into the shooting. It's hard.
Hey Kirk, this is Jess and IMTO. If you want to give me a call, I can remote to your computer and try to help you out.
He obviously can't answer the question that I had then. So which was, I don't remember the fine details, but I know we had a balance hanging out there. And there was a lot of concern, a lot of question about whether it was a credit that we would draw on or if that was classified in some other way. And I can't remember how that was resolved, but I would like some clarity on that. So
A local match balance?
yes.
All right.
So we'll,
Yes, Stacy.
5. We just did this one, so I just don't want to give Kirk's number out in the middle of the.
Would I can.
Thanks.
Kirk, you got to start those signing lessons again.
Now you're going to have to mute again.
Okay, there, I can,
There we
sorry,
go.
I don't know what's going on with this thing, but, yeah, I can hear everyone now.
That's good.
Did you hear the question? Kirk?
I did not, Gary, could you go over that?
It was about, and forgive me, I don't remember the details, but we had some discussion about an amount that was a credit that was out there that we were trying to determine whether that would be applied toward future match requirement, or how was that resolved?
Good question. I think we'd have to discuss that with Rich, Gary. I know we had discussions about if we had savings from the regionalization, how would that be carried forward?
I'll have to go back. It's probably something historic, right? Because since 2007, we have to spend your money first, and then we're allowed to spend state money. So like it's match. So you would think spend a dollar, but right? No, you spend all local, and then you can start spending state funds. So since 2007, there should be no accumulation of any local match because the law says you spend local first. Now, I can't tell you what happened before 2000, whatever, when I joined 4 years ago.
Right,
But-
this was prior to your
Okay.
joining.
Alright.
Kirk was heavily involved there, so he has some records.
All right, we'll definitely look at that and I'll get with Doc.
Okay, that's good.
We'll
Thank
figure
you.
what that looks like.
The only other comment I wanted to make too was, with Rich's leadership, I think the board has really coalesced together really well. I think when we first started having some meetings, everyone was still kind of in a mindset of, okay, this regional stuff is great, but what's happening in Cumberland County or what's happening in Dauphin County? I think now when we have our board meetings, we're talking about a collective we, which is our entire service area. So shared ride, but also our fixed route service area. So over the past several years, I think the board has really moved ahead by leaps and bounds. A lot of that's due to Rich's leadership. And I know from speaking from my perspective, I learned so much at the board meetings because there's so many talented people around the table that are really there for the common goal of serving our passengers. And I think that's probably a focus change from maybe what we've seen in the distant past. And every time we have a meeting at SRTA in York, the mission statement's right there, that we're looking at the mobility needs of our residents, the people we're serving. We can never lose focus on that. And I think it's positioned well in the meeting room, and, everything we do at the board emphasizes that.
Sure, it is like night and day from the old days. I think we've gone from being one of the worst, covered by one of the worst, to being covered by one of the best.
So, yeah, I mean, the performance at CAT, yes, there's no doubt. Even just let's look at the safety program, right? So we have, it's called safety, SAFTI, State Association for Transit Insurance. And so it's a self-insurance pool. CAT wasn't allowed in. Their performance was so poor that they couldn't join. And so 4 years later, we're now members, right? And our performance for the CAT division, the Harrisburg division, so which is here, safety-wise, we're outperforming Mercer County. No one listens. You know what I'm saying? Like, so when you look at it, there, all the large transit systems, we're on the other end. Like, we're doing really good stuff, right? And we have a long ways to go. I like to say I appreciate Kurt's comments. Thank you. I'm never satisfied, right? What's better? What's tomorrow? What are we doing next? And so it'll always be about that continuous improvement.
This is exactly what we were expecting. Push for you to be the one taking over. So
Pressure, right?
It's not easy. I'm glad we kept it from you long enough. So
that's right. Kept it a secret. 2 years in, I'm like, what?
Well, thank you. Do you have anything else?
I don't think so. I don't. Kirk, anything that we should talk about? Are we good?
No, I think you captured everything. Thanks, Rich, for coming in. Appreciate it.
don't be a stranger.
I won't be. We'll be back. All right. All right.
Do we have any other business to come before us today? If not, then I guess we're looking for a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you. Thanks, Rich.